It's the Stranger Nerds here. We got myself, Connor Vandermark, with Tommy Grant and Mitchell Lee with me. And we have season 4, chapter 3 of a wonderful, wonderful season so far. I've been really enjoying it. And we finally get to the point where I've actually seen this episode and the next episode. So this is my only two quote unquote rewatch episodes for myself. So we had The Monster and the Superhero, written by Kathleen Sheridan and directed by Sean Levy. So, opening first, let's go opening thoughts as we usually do, gentlemen.
So I think it's worth noting that this is definitely one of the filler episodes because I've looked in the past. We have the typical Duffer Brothers starting off the first two episodes. Sean Levy is the one who typically directs episodes 3 and 4. And I also want to note that this is the shortest episode of the season, coming in at 63 minutes. So just to get an idea, we're going to be dealing with a lot more lengthy episodes coming up. But I definitely like this episode and the fact that we get some new environment, different character interactions, especially with the Dr. Owens bit. We finally get a little bit more of him coming back into the play, having only been in for a quick scene in season 3. Otherwise, yeah, it was kind of just a filler for me. It's you've got the group investigating. We find little pieces of information that obviously we didn't know before that kind of thickens the plot, but nothing really of significance happens, with the exception of I would say, the end couple of end scenes.
I want to. You,
For one, would push back on the filler episode commentary. I think that we have plenty to talk about, and so we'll talk about it. So I
Well,
won't really get into why,
with,
but
with
you'll.
this season, there's always plenty to talk about. But in terms of the overall season, I would say this is definitely one of the filler episodes.
no, to me, this is not filler. Like, so, okay, your definition
Wrong.
of filler, your definition of filler is much different than my definition of filler. Like,
Your
as
definition
someone
of
who,
filler is bad.
no, well, yeah, for you, Tommy, yes. Um, like, as someone who has watched anime for a good part of their life, and comparing like a filler episode of like One Piece compared to like this is actual meaningful, actual content. And to me, it's just like it was a regular episode. Like I had like there was like some episodes in like season 2 where it's like could they did away with this? Yeah, like the wonderful L montage arc. Um, but this is significant stuff. There's some real character building here that's impactful to our story, and like I can hop right into it, but I
Let me
thought
rephrase my definition by saying, when I mean filler, that's what I mean. It's more the character development episodes. There's no big oh shit moments, with the exception of the end. It's more of just kind of a calm episode where you just get more information about the plot and the character development. But there's nothing big and crazy happens, in my opinion, at least.
yeah, that's not the definition of filler, buddy. You need a better word for that.
Well,
Yeah.
however you want to call it, I don't know. That's just
a,
how I
char-
view it.
a character development episode is fair. I have no issue with that terminology there, but filler is not the way I'll put
I
it.
never meant it in a bad or negative tone. It's just it was a calm, relaxed episode. There wasn't anything crazy going on.
Let's dive into it then.
I think filler automatically has a connotation of negativity.
Yes.
Well, I did not mean it negatively, so my apologies.
So let's dive in and let's talk about the reintroduction of Dr. Owens, which we see. At first, I was like, "Is this a UFO kind of thing going on right now?" And then how they kind of open that scene, but we get a helicopter flying into the backyard of Dr. Owens's house, and Colonel Williams shows up off the helicopter and pretty much is trying to get the information what's going on because he is starting to figure the pieces like, oh, Alice still is probably still alive, and I'm going to try to find her. And and we get to a little later where uh, Dr. Owens definitely is still keeping his own lab notes hidden. We can tell, like I mentioned, a little later on.
Yeah.
And I'm intrigued because I'm intrigued. Like Dr. Owens, I think is definitely someone who I really have come around on as a character overall so far. Of like, he's not like a dickhead. Like he has good intentions, and I'm intrigued. Like because remember correctly, the very first episode was Brenner, right? Was the opening scene
Yeah.
For what? For this season or?
for this season? Yes, the very opening scene was Dr. Brenner going through his day, and then it was him going into
Correct.
the thing. Yeah. So
Yep.
Because I am intrigued if Elle sees Dr. Brenner again. That's something that I guess I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but like,
That's all right.
Dr. Owens is someone who
Jump away.
I see him as a complicated character, and I think that they've done him very well as a character. Like, I think he's being a lot more fleshed out as integral to, like, he deserves his own storyline in its own right. And I'm kind of glad it's kind of like a nice intersection with how it's treated with Elle. And like, let's be real, he's taking on a lot of risk of protecting her. He could have easily gave her up. It's like, no, there's more value to her. And
I like this character a lot in this season. I really like kind of what they do as things go further along in this episode with Dr. Owens. It also doesn't hurt that this actor's in two of my all-time favorite movies. So I just like this guy.
Yeah, Dr. Owens is.
fair enough.
I think he's one of the few characters on the scientist side that has a moral compass.
Yes,
Because
he's not a stereotypical just like mustache twirler type.
Yeah, and of course, like I think a lot of the negative things we see from him are because of the job he has. He's not supposed to be some soft guy. I mean, he works with the government. He works with the military. He's dealing with Dr. Brenner with these CIA run experiments on kids. It's not really something that can be fleshed out to the public. So you got to keep a lot of things close to your chest. But when it comes to kids, he definitely seems to have a soft spot. We saw that with how he dealt with Will in season 2, where everyone was like, "Oh, let's just let him die," and he was the only one who's like, "No, we're gonna find a way to get this kid to live." Same thing with 11. The whole military sees her as a threat that the scientists whipped up in a lab, and they want to take her out. He's the only one that wants to keep her alive because he knows that she's just a kid and it doesn't want to hurt anybody.
I think too, what comes to like, especially because this is something that's taking place in the '80s, where like the ethics of science is something that really hasn't really reached to the maturity that it has in today's world, where like again, there's very much Cold War shenanigans still going on here, as we can tell with the previous season and currently the plot with Hopper. So the fact that there is someone who actually is like trying to, because ethics is a huge issue in the science community still today, and understanding like what lines you cannot cross, and understanding like no, because very much results do matter in that kind of community.
Yeah.
So,
but I do want to point out though one kind of little piece of information we get from Colonel Williams, and the fact that he kind of confirms, like, we've always had the question of like what Dr. Brenner was trying to do with all these kids. We knew they were doing telepathic kind of experiments in trying to reach out, for espionage purposes. But from Colonel Williams, we get the fact that Dr. Brenner was raising 11 to be a remote assassin. to be able to assassinate people using her powers from anywhere around the world. That just kind of amps up. Like, we haven't seen her use those abilities, but the fact that that's what they were training her to do, it kind of gives you a little more perspective as to why they want to take her out so badly.
And the other thing too,
And
other than the obvious MK Ultra shit, but like that is something that is very much a desired type of weapon, I guess is the best way to phrase it, because of the fact that like it leaves no evidence. Like you can't tell who did it.
Yeah.
It just no, this person just went psycho and like there was like that flashback with the one woman from season 1. So, so we get into we'll stay on this whole storyline here with Elle. We catch up where the immediate aftermath of Elle's assault on Angela, and Elle obviously is in quite shock of no, everything just happened. And the gang eventually drives home with the wonderful. I don't know how you guys took that scene. I was like, this feels so awkward right now with John Argyle just like having a stoner conversation on the way home.
Yeah, it's definitely meant to be, I think, the comedic relief. I don't think it hits as well as it could. This was definitely one of the few aspects of the season I didn't care for, was Jonathan being the stoner. I get why they did it, but it's just from seeing him from season 1 to 3 being this hardworking kid to going to this I don't want to do anything anymore kind of slacker stoner mentality. I don't know. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah,
And
I
the
agree
scenes
with
with him and Argyle just they're funny to me a little bit, but they're not, as successful as they could be.
I keep on waiting. I watched this whole season. The 4th season of this show has just been spent by me going, can someone hit this guy with the school bus? And it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened between him and well, you already know, Noah Schnapp. No one has taken out the 2 worst characters yet, and to me that's a problem. They need to go.
Like I agree with you, Tyler. Like I like Jonathan. I feel like they're kind of doing his character a disservice. Like I understand like the whole kind of plot, like the plot idea, like oh he has no friends, the only friends he has is a pothead, so now he becomes a pothead. But like still like I don't feel as much of a because in the first 3 seasons we see him as a protector for Will, and I was kind of hoping that he would also kind of take that role on for Elle as well, as they're kind of their pseudo sibling now, and we don't really see that at all.
The only reason I see is because Jonathan is dealing with his trauma. Because the other thing we have to remember is, since season 1, this is the first time where Jonathan, the whole Byer family as a whole, kind of is it's at peace. They have nothing crazy going on. They're relaxing, with the exception of Joyce now going to Russia. But like, they're in California. They're living a new life. They're not under the stress of Hawkins anymore. So I think this is his way of kind of just dealing with all the past stress and just trying to move on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I wish they didn't take that route with this character.
Yeah, I agree with that. We'll see how it plays out, but no, time will only tell. So we got the introduction of Murray. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to continue on to wonderful Murray saying hello to the children with a wonderful dinner of risotto. This is
definitely like.
This is a funny scene.
As much as the conversation in the car was awkward with Argyle and Jonathan, I thought it was perfect in this scene.
Yes.
This is one of the few scenes where Argyle comes in and it works. Because just the reactions from Murray when the fact that he's like, who the hell is this guy? Like, I don't even know who you are. You're just in the house. I'll be nice to you. and Joyce isn't picking up on the fact that they're completely stoned out of their mind. Murray is fully aware
Yeah.
that they're both stoned out of their minds, and it's just that awkward like interaction where it's like Murray doesn't want to rat them out, but at the same time he's like, "Come on, Joyce, like
This
pick up
is
what they're
pissing
putting
me
down."
off.
No, this was at least a. When it comes to like the whole weed bit, this was a very good scene.
And I
So yeah,
definitely like the line though. Like, I feel like Murray would be a fun dad because like that one thing where Murray's
no.
like, "It's the risotto. It's not. Is that why everybody's like tense here?" And Jonathan and Argyle are quick to be like, "No, man. Like the cooking's great. Like it's delicious. Like it's just that reassurance." Like Murray was genuinely concerned that they didn't like his risotto, and I thought that was hilarious coming from him as a character.
Fun uncle, yes. Fun dad, no. Those are two completely different things. I can't see Murray raising kids. The patience is not there
But
for
that's
him
the thing.
for
Like
that.
that's kind of the vibe he gave off. It was just a funny like. He was wearing the little apron. He cooks the whole meal for everybody. They could have just got takeout. He didn't have to cook for anybody. He did that because he wanted to.
So, though they mentioned the whole skate attack at the dinner table as well. Like the fact that like that wasn't brought up sooner, like Elle might be in trouble that she fucking bashed him in the fucking head. Like that was kind of
It's called
fathom
assault.
to me. Like, yeah. And of course, Elle went to her room. Like, no, she kind of feels like shit because obviously she does feel like shit. You know, literally having PTSD and flashbacks, like the scene where we'll just cut to it where we get the next day where the cops show up for Elle and they're asking for her and she is put in handcuffs and put into the cop car and she's going in for processing and they're interviewing her and asking her like, oh, like no, were you trying to kill her? And again, Elle not having a proper understanding of what to do in these kind of situations says, I don't know. No, not understanding like, oh, you're like everything you say right now is viable in the court of law. And that is a big issue right there. Uh,
It's the first time she's ever had to deal with consequences for her actions
Yeah.
outside of Hopper or Brenner's discipline,
that's very true.
which is obviously much different than
Yeah, it's a
the
very
actual
different
law.
set of consequences than
Yes.
she's used to.
Yeah. She's
I
not
would
getting her
say,
egos taken away anymore. It's you're going to fucking jail.
I think a good way to put it now, this whole season with Elle is that, at least the first 3 episodes, is that there hasn't been a safety net for her, which is something where, again, like,
No.
like this, she's just out of her comfort zone completely, and she's just gonna, because of that, plus with no one trying to correct her before her failings, it's just been,
Yeah.
it's been building up as it's been going. So
Yeah.
Mike,
It's also taking a kid that has structure going into a house with no structure
that's very
because
true
she's
too.
had Brenner and Hopper have given her structure, whereas Joyce is kind of like the loosey goosey, like let's have fun and not deal with the stress anymore kind of parent.
Yeah, that's a good point
But
too. That's a very good analysis on that. And then we also get Mike,
yeah,
Will, and Jonathan also trying to get her out, and we get the last scene we see is of with Mike and Elle to each other is her driving off in the police van off to the juvenile detention center, and
yep,
everything's like, oh, she's gone now. We got to figure out a way to get her back, and of course, conveniently enough, Joyce is now on her way to Alaska. So the one adult that can actually do something is
Yeah.
conveniently now
Yep.
gone, and I'm like, ooh. And like the comment of Murray is
Well,
like,
that's good writing.
oh yeah, that's good writing, yeah. But like I like the comment of Murray, like I was like, oh no, they're probably just like having a good time, playing Nintendo, smoking some reefer, and Joyce is like giving like you gotta be kidding me. Like look, but at the same time, like it is the exact opposite of what's happening in Murray's mind of like you are
yep.
so screwed, and
But it's funny because it also puts the ball back into Jonathan's court where he has to now step up again.
yes,
because he technically is, the adult of the house at this point, and he's got to fucking man up for a few minutes while Joyce is having her little vacation in Russia.
Yeah, and the cutscene of like, Murray going through all that and then jumping over to the kids in the police station. I was like, yes, that was very, very good directing. I like how they did that. Very nice little dichotomy there. So then we get Elle, who we get 3 cars that pull over the police van, and then a woman comes out, flashes her badge, and it's like, hey, Jane Hopper's in this van, right? And it's like, yeah. I was like, we're taking custody of her. And next thing you know, Dr. Owens is coming out of this van. So I'm intrigued what factions are currently in the government right now, because of the fact that we have a separate faction that, of course, Dr. Owens is teaming up with, that is, let's just be real, how it seems, is opposed to the military and is willing to try to take the situation into their own hands. And
you asked that, because I don't think they ever fully clarify who works for what aspect of the government, because they always just say the government.
yes,
And like season 1, like, we know that Hawkins' lab was under like the Department of Energy, even though it was probably CIA run, possibly. I'm not quite sure.
most likely.
But it seems to be like a quasi-military / CIA op, but they never name it. And they both seem to be part of the same coin. From the conversation at the beginning of the episode, Colonel Williams and Dr. Owens definitely worked with each other at one point. And it seems to be like they used to be colleagues that never really saw eye to eye. But they never say it. So I'm very curious as to what aspect of the government they actually are part of and who's keeping tabs on them.
Yeah, I think too.
Because we know that,
like,
Yeah, go ahead.
when it comes like to secret clearances and stuff, like, there is very much a thing in the government where it's on a need to know basis, and that's how they kind of restrict information and an understand of, hey, only people who actually need to handle this are the ones who are supposed to know about this. So that's when, like, we see movies and stuff like if something is top secret, even if it is top secret, only a select people of the top secret community even know about that faction of thing, because their work pertains to it. If your work doesn't pertain to it, you have no idea what's going on here. And honestly, that's a lot of the things when it comes to the CIA, is that the reason why they were able to do so much is because of the fact that only a select few had a full picture, and then many other small entities kind of worked in their own little cell. And no, they didn't really have much interaction between the other projects going on.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up, the interaction with the government.
Yeah. And then Dr. Owens, we got the scene of him popping out the secret cubby of this computer he had, and telling Elle that he has a way to get her powers back, and even stronger if she comes with them. But he does give her the option of choice. Like, I can send you back to your friends as well. This is your decision to make. But he's trying to convince her he is on her side, and trying to give her her own autonomy in the situation of, like, hey, I know your powers are something that is special to you. I know you want them. I'm willing to help you out here. And we leave off where she agrees, and then agents are sent to the buyer's house, which I'm very intrigued by, about them on the move with her. Like, no, they're doing other things. So I forget how this interaction goes in the next episode, because I mentioned before that I've seen this one in the next one, but, like, I'm intrigued this interaction because now we have an Elle Dr. Owens branch in the story, and now we also have it's like, does the agents have anything to do with the boys, and, like, are they going to do their own kind of thing with them? And, like, I'm curious. I'm curious where that train of the pathway is going to go down to.
Now, in terms of the Dr. Owens 11 aspect, because
So,
obviously the last time we saw Jane or Elle go through her little power mishap, we had a terrible aspect of season 2 where we had a training montage with 8. How do you think Dr. Owens is going to be getting her powers back for this time? Do you think 8's coming back? Do you think something else is going to happen?
well, my original thought right now is that Dr. Brenner is going to be put into the fold again. That is my initial inkling. Because I'm assuming,
Okay.
I'm assuming Brenner has done research since this. Like, it'd be wild if this is his life's work. It'd be wild if he hasn't. So, I'm intrigued if that's going to be a situation where that's going to come up with that interaction of like, oh, Daddy's back, but like Daddy's also very traumatically PTSD for her. So
Yeah.
that's my train of thought at the moment. But I did put in my notes here. I usually take notes during the episodes, and I literally have is there a training montage coming up for Elle? So it's on my tracker of like this is a strong possibility.
Because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe up to this point, we haven't seen Dr. Brenner since season 1, with the exception of his cameo in season 2 with the training montage where 8 makes 11 see him again.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were supposed to be understanding that he's dead.
Oh yeah,
from
that's
the
right.
Demogorgon from season 1.
Yeah.
That's right. I forgot
So
about that.
that's definitely an interesting aspect with showing him the flashbacks with 11, if he's still alive or if that's just for flashback purposes. Because I believe he was supposedly killed off by the Demogorgon.
I'm trying to recall.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but I believe
Yeah.
that's the aspect.
Yeah.
That's something to think about.
I remember her spying on him, too. And they went to go I have to look at that again. Because I was even today I was like rewatching some stuff to about my interest, how things are going. All right, Mitchell, anything before we hop to the next section?
Now let's keep it going.
Okay. So let's talk about, as we mentioned before, Murray, Joyce, and I'm going to throw Hopper in here as well, because Hopper, of course, is this storyline.
Yep.
So Murray and Joyce talk about how should they or should they not have told the kids what the actual reason for this. And I'm kind of on Murray's side, where if Elle knew, she would have been on that plane with them and trying to save Hopper, because of course Hopper is someone who is very meaningful to her. So I'm not disagreeing with Murray on that.
But it's also,
go ahead.
It's also, do you want to put 11 through the trauma of, if Hopper isn't actually alive or if he doesn't get rescued, going through the trauma of knowing that she could have had him back, but now she's technically lost him again.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably the main reason Joyce didn't want to tell her.
No.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I thought that was a sensible decision to make. We get the scene with Hopper now talking to Dimitri about, hey, this deal is being made. Of course, him faking on his Russian accent, calling it a pig, and him working on his Russian.
Yep.
So Dimitri informs him
I really
like,
like their back and forth, by the way.
It's great. Like those two
The
are
fact that they
great
actually had
pair.
them talk, yeah.
Yes. So Dimitri informs them, hey, this deal has been made. No, of course, Dimitri's kind of, ripping him like, hey, your girl sounds really pretty from what she sounds like on the phone, and like, getting underneath his skin a little bit, because he is the American here, and he's, let's be real, Dimitri's very much exploiting the situation, and
Yeah.
he's trying to make a quick buck out of it, and he sees this as an opportunity for him to take care of that, and at the same time, his interest is not for Russia, his interest is for himself, and Hopper is at least able to have at least an option to get out of there. So he tells him, like, Hopper, that he's the escape within the day, or the plane's arriving the next day. Hopper approaches another inmate, trades his meal for Purge, trying to break the chains during the next before the next day, and then he pretty much
Fucks up
gets
Hopper's
chained
foot.
around his foot, and then that was very because the guy warns, like, your leg to be broken. Hopper's like, I don't give a shit, just do it. Like, this needs to be done, and gets taken care of.
It
So
won't
there's a
be the
movie there.
last time
No.
that there's something that's a little bit something like, I don't want to say squeamish to watch, or just something that's in that area of, like, all right, is this the kids show that it was in season 1?
Oh, it's not.
It's definitely not, but yeah, it's definitely actually, no, it's not the first of this season, because let's be honest, the deaths have been brutal.
Yeah,
Oh, God.
season, I mean, like I've said, season 4 is a whole new level of just trauma, horror, everything that goes with it. It's a very dark season.
They've cranked it up, and I really appreciate that.
I'm very excited for what's going to come with season 5, if it's going to be on this level. But
If they ever make it,
it's being made. It's supposed to come out. I think end of 25, possibly early 26.
that's way too damn long in between seasons.
I agree, but
It's brutal.
I believe they're either filming or concluding filming, but it's coming out. It's gonna happen.
It'll be here. So let's get back to. So that's the California-Alaska storyline, or Russia. If you want to talk about that. Then we have our. Let's be real. Our main line of what's going on. To be fair, this is my first time reading through this part of the show notes. I'm kind of quickly running through this. If I want to attack it this way,
We
Now,
have two quick story arcs, and the fact that a handful of scenes kind of thrown together.
yeah. I want to talk about Lucas first, because I think that's more lower threat level at this moment. Because we have Lucas is definitely in between a rock and a hard place at the moment, where he's getting pulled one way by his wonderful friends on the basketball team, and of course his allegiance is to, because it's real, he's part of the Hellfire Club, or
He's playing the double side role, right?
Yeah, and he's trying to.
He's the man on the.
He's trying to look cool. He's trying to look cool for the older guys and trying to fit in, because
Fake ass Glenn Powell.
He's trying to make his own spot in the popularity circle, which he already admitted to Dustin, like, hey, this is where I want to be. I don't want to be someone who gets picked on anymore. I want to be on the in crowd. So,
but now he's part of the group that's basically picking on people, because they're just on a witch hunt right now. I mean, they're just interrogating people, beating the crap out of people, trying to find out where the hell Eddie is.
yeah,
They're becoming monsters at this point.
yes,
And Lucas, I kind of fully realized, like, I'm not in the right group.
Yeah, like, it's what's real. They're hell bent on vengeance, and it's making them make dumb decisions, and they don't care, because that's real. This is a figurative witch hunt here over Eddie.
Yep.
And but we get the scene of them running into the band members, trying to figure out where Eddie is. The one guy coughs up that Dustin was asking for them, and Lucas at least tries to get them the heads up, like, hey, they're hunting for him. Like, no, and Lucas is trying to play up at like, oh, like, because again, he doesn't want to reveal that he's friends with these people because that makes him seem like the enemy now. And I'm pretty sure he gave up that where Eddie's location is correctly. That's where they're hunting. They're in that building where Eddie's supposed to be around too. Remember correctly?
Yeah.
They're in that house currently. That's where we left off on them.
Yep.
So yeah, they that's definitely. I'm intrigued how this is going to play out because will they find Eddie and how is Lucas going to handle his interaction? Because what's real, like his relationship now with the gang is pretty segmented. So then we get
He's completely
yeah. So then cutting back again, a little bouncing around here. Vecna, because we do have a nice little scene with him, and we see this where we see the whole town of Hawkins, and then we kind of zoom in on this house, which we later find out is the home of his name is Victor. Remember correctly, the previous thought was the insane guy.
Creel.
Yep, Victor Creel. So we get this scene of like, oh, here's this one house that's kind of sitting here, by itself, and then this is pretty much the lair of Vecna, if I would put it in that aspect. And one thing that kind of came to mind is like, Vecna, the tendrils to it that connect to Vecna remind me very much of the tendrils from season 2. Of like, oh,
yeah,
with this, the original tunnels that were being made and all these things, like, is this a setup for later on for Vecna to actually tie into this whole plane and having this connection over to the real world? But on the flip side, we have something where Vecna has killed before, as we found out later on, in 1959. And tying this back to Dr. Owens feels like he's aware of something as well with his background, Vecna's background, and it seems like because he's aware of like, oh, there's some danger or power here that I know we've seen the photos, but like I don't know if they have connected the pieces to this Victor guy as well. So I'm kind of curious on how that's going to play out as well. But we get the scene where Vecna is kind of like he's going through people's minds and thoughts of seeing like the he's hunting. How I did rewatch the scenes with Chrissy and Fred. It looks I should have rewatched this scene too because it looks like he's hunting for guilt. Because not like Fred is called a murderer, but like there's no real proof that he murdered anyone. Chrissy, I don't think murdered anyone either. Her guilt is more with the insecurities that are brought on by her mother, and it looks like her mother is now dead. But like looks like there's guilt with that as well, and that's being pried upon by Vecna. And we get the last one, which is Max, who has because again Max didn't kill her brother, but we see that Vecna is trying to pry into that. So this is interesting, and you can see like he tried to pry into Lucas's mind, and oh shit, we'll get to this a little bit later, but things just connected because he posed into Lucas's mind, and Lucas has had a bad headache, and then he had a nosebleed. And those are the same symptoms that also Fred, Chrissy, and Max has. So
Yep.
we will go back around on that when we get to discuss about it. But like
We'll
that
come back
just
around and
pointed
you
just
can let out your brain blast.
yes, because that just fired in right there. Anything else on that before I jump over to the Hawkins group? Or yeah.
Let's shift over so that way you can get your brain
Yeah.
blast out. Let's do it. Actually, one thing I did want to point out, and I wanted to ask you, Connor, was we do see a quick scene in Eddie's trailer where we get kind of a little crack on
Oh,
the
the
ceiling.
crack. Yeah, yeah.
What do you think the significance of that is? Because they
Portal
obviously
shit.
showed it to us for a reason.
Yeah, portal shit. Like upside down opening up again. Who the hell knows?
Okay.
Like it could be a situation where that spot it could be significant where like he like because there could be something opening up where Fred died too, and those locations
Yep.
could be spots where kind of the one thing that just weird analogy. Have you guys ever seen Full Metal Alchemist? It's an anime show.
No,
I've
but
seen
I've heard
bits and
great
pieces.
things
No,
about it.
fantastic show. But with that, like there's situations where it's kind of a big plot point, so there might be a little bit of spoilers in this, but like there are locations that have significance later on, and like in the end, it kind of draws like the certain symbol that's very important to the show's narrative, and that's all giving away. But it kind of reminds me of the same thing, like oh, like for example, like would say that where the buyer is located makes a pentagram. Who knows? But like it could be something like that. There's ways you can play that off. Um,
Okay.
so well, there's not enough information there yet for me. Um,
Okay.
so the Hawkins group. So we have the Nancy joining the party. After we get because so Eddie's still at the boathouse. The other four knuckleheads decide, hey, let's go investigate this more. They decide they wanted to go to Eddie's cabin. Remember correctly? His old house is poke around. Remember correctly? Is that correct? Trying to remember what their task was. So I forget how they linked up with Nancy.
Nancy and Robin were basically going to go look for information on
Before that, how they link
Victor
up again?
the whole.
Yeah, Victor Creel, but how they link up beforehand? How did Steve and all them go to Nancy in the first place? That's the one thing I forget right now.
I think it just happened to be coincidence.
Yeah,
That they
I think
saw.
I think the four ones
I
went.
think they just saw the lights pulled up because they were driving around. They were probably on
Yeah,
the way to see Eddie or go, and they just happened to pass by.
yeah,
I
because
don't
they
think
know
there's anything
yeah,
that
it was they
brought
happened to
them
be
there.
there. They were. I think they were driving to Eddie's place to see anything going on, and then they
Yeah.
didn't saw Nancy there and the full car of people, and then Fred. They discover Fred, and Fred, of course, eyeballs.
Yep.
Nancy did bring
Yep.
up Victor Creel, like, hey, have you thought about this guy? And it's like, oh, he's locked up. There's no worry about him. Everything's safe. No one has to deal with him. They reconvene in the trailer park. Then they have the wonderful split where Steve kind of, and Dustin jokes about this later on, like throws himself at Nancy and like, hey, I should protect you. We shouldn't split up with this Vecna creep around. And then the whole issue, like, oh, no one can drive his car. And Robin's like, screw you all. I'll go with Robin. I'm going with Nancy. And this would solve this problem. And Steve's kind of a little bummed about it. It was very funny. And then
Steve wanted to have the Fred and Daphne side quest, but got stuck with Shaggy and Scooby.
yes,
That's
very
essentially
much
what happened.
so. Yeah. Hey, Kim Payne complains like, "I'm always a goddamn babysitter. Like, come on, like." So we get
But
the
he's a
split
damn
where,
good one. That's why he gets stuck.
yep, he's a damn good one. So we get the split where Robin and Nancy are going chasing the lead on Victor Creel, and then we get the Steve and the children, Dustin and Max, going to Max's therapist's house because that's because they made the connection where Fred and Chrissy were both in therapy, and that's their connection to each other. As Nancy being Nancy Drew, putting things together as they're collecting notes with each other, and
Yep.
Let's talk about Nancy and Robin first. They find out that Victor Creel, usual news article stuff. Nancy thinks that Robin and Steve are a thing, which is obviously not correct because we know Robin, of course, is lesbian. And Robin's trying to let Nancy know, like, hey, I'm not no intention. We're just close friends, and she doesn't want to reveal to Nancy because she's not really friends with her. There was no real connection with us. This is what's really their first real engaging with each other, and obviously Nancy can't handle Robin because Robin is very much like ADHD brain and a lot to handle and keep it focused.
I don't like the way Robin is in this season because it just didn't seem it just didn't seem to fit season 3 Robin to me. It seemed like they just amped this up a lot more for season 4 and it gets worse. I'll just say that.
I think the reason they did that is because season 3 Robin was kind of the lone wolf, I guess, if you will, and now that she's kind of found her group that she can be herself around.
Mm-hmm. That's why.
But
She's
this
open.
isn't. But Nancy's not part of that group as far as she can.
Well, I mean,
she's concerned.
She's gotten very used to hanging out around Steve and the rest of the group, and now she's not going to just shut it off like that because she's around Nancy. Like, she's comfortable. She knows she can trust Nancy because everybody else does.
Mm-hmm.
But also,
I think that's why Robin's a little bit more loose and relaxed.
I wouldn't say not just that. I also think it's more of like an anxiety. I wouldn't even say she's comfortable in Nancy. I would say she's uncomfortable, which is why she's having the motor mouth. Because in this whole scene, I very much relate to Robin. Of like, there's either one side or the other where even when I am uncomfortable in situations, I can just keep talking, and it is because the sound of my own voice can make me feel better sometimes. Who knows? But like, it's very much like there is, and even Robin mentions like she feels the weird tension because Nancy has no idea what's up with Robin in the first place. This is again their first real interaction other than, oh, we went through some traumatic shit with each other, and she thinks that because it's real, Nancy could still have a thing for Steve that hasn't been confirmed yet, and
which she clearly does because she's asking if
yes,
her and Steve are a thing,
and Robin feels that tension of like, oh, like, is she a threat? Like, a threat's not the right word about it, but like, no, just that kind of dynamic. And like, there's a lot of missing information on both sides that they are just like, what the hell? But honestly, I really enjoyed Robin in this scene, and I thought it was a little fun interaction.
Mitchell's making faces. What's wrong, Mitchell?
You're making faces.
This version of Maya Hawke works for me in Inside Out 2. It doesn't work for me in Stranger Things. Because she voices anxiety in Inside Out 2 and does a great job with that.
Oh, does she?
But, yeah, no. And it's a really well done job. But it just doesn't work for Stranger Things for me. I'm glad that you guys do like it, and I feel like I am very much on the in the minority when it comes to this, but I just really liked that character so much in season 3. I didn't want them to really change her too much.
I don't think they changed much.
It might just be that.
I don't think they changed much in the first place. Where it's like, again, who else learns Russian for God's sakes, or willing to? Like, it just she's quirky, and like to me, this lines up nicely in my little mental picture of her.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Connor, because from her interactions earlier in the past couple episodes with Steve and Dustin, like she's her same season 3 self. It's not until she's around Nancy where she's uncomfortable that she starts acting a little bit more, motor mouth, I guess.
Yes, Jabber Jaws. So the key thing that came out of this, though, was Robin did come across a old tape of her being very much into cryptids and the conspiracy side of the world. Mentions like, oh, this might have information. Why not give it a shot? Scroll through, and turns out that we get information where Victor claims that a demon wasn't a demon killed his family and thought the house was haunted by a demon and tried to exorcise it, which Robin made a comment like, this is very early compared, like exorcism wasn't out yet. So this is something where it wasn't as well known at the time. So this is a serious thing, not just like some for show kind of, exorcism hasn't been really brought into the mainstream media yet. Not the hegemony of it hasn't really latched in yet. And things like it's a possibility where the punishment of the demon was his family was killed and he was spared. So I think that was a really interesting tidbit that came up. Like, as I mentioned before, like this demon has killed, which we assume is Vecna, in 1959. Why has he returned now? So then we get, so Robin radios into Dustin, let him know, like, oh, here's the situation. We have a scene where Max is talking to her therapist, and the therapist is trying like to help with Max. Like Max, of course, is underneath the guise of like, oh, something came up, this deaths are bothering me, and the therapist tries to reassure Max, like, oh, what's going on here? Like everything is normal when it comes to PTSD. Like when things come on, it comes on very heavy for them. And Max tries to start prying about the other two patients, by making the connection, like, oh, I was next to where the murder happened, and like poking around. The therapist wasn't giving her much, but they decided to steal her keys, book it out of there, and decided to go break into her office at the school. When they get there, they find out that not just Chrissy, but Fred also was seeing Miss Kelly for therapy, and they were suffering from headaches, nosebleeds, and nightmares similar to Max. Now, the brain blast I had earlier is that we saw a headache and a nosebleed when it came to Lucas, when Vecna went prying around with different people around Hawkins with his wonderful Professor X scene, I guess you could say. And I'm curious so currently we have a timetable on victims. And we'll get to a little later with Max, but originally we had the knowledge that Vecna would pick them. We get the first illusion. That's how we claimed it before. The first illusion that something is going on. So we had the illusion of Chrissy with her mother in the bathroom stall, and the illusion with Fred in the car. Then the second instance is, and we don't know what triggers these illusions or why they are starting at that point. But we know they do occur. Then the second event is the clock that dings off, and that's something I was kind of pinging around because you mentioned it last episode, like what do you think? I think the significance of the clock is. I'm trying to read a little more, see if there's any like coincidences between the clocks in between every single instance. And I was talking about like Max has that same grandfather clock situation coming in at the end of the scene where she realizes, oh, I experienced all three of these things. Uh-oh, I might be next. And then what do you know? Max hears Vecna calling. And then so the second instance we get is the clock. And then the third instance is when they eventually do succumb to Vecna's curse. Refresh me. Max didn't really have a original illusion, correct?
Not really, no.
Because all we get is her hearing
I don't believe
Max when, as I don't believe so either. Because we hear Vecna calling to Max while she's in the room, while she's looking through the papers, and then we get the situation where she walks down the hallway and then the clock. Yeah. So I don't know if that lines up with the original thought I had of like, oh, these the order of things that happen. But the fact that we saw the scene of Lucas having a nosebleed and a headache right when Vecna kind of like poked into his brain or poked into his guilt of what he was feeling, this might be the actual first trigger, like the countdown timer on each character that may come across this in the future. So, possible red flags for Max in next episode. And of course, now Lucas also has red flags.
I would definitely say more concerned for Max after she saw the clock and everything.
Yeah. Well, Max, of course, we know the timer's on for her now. So we gotta figure it out, and we don't know how she's gonna react yet. But the fact that Lucas also might be up as well is really intriguing. So I'm intrigued how that's gonna go. And then that's pretty much the episode. Is there anything I missed?
No, I mean, that was kind of the big ending to the episode, just symbolizing that one of our actual, group members is finally targeted by Vecna, so stakes are getting a little high for next episodes.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know why to leave off too.
Yeah. So after this happened, this is when I went back and I was looking through the episode 1 and 2. So I was watching through Chrissy because I was more so like the Vecna interactions. I will admit I did not rewatch the first two interactions with Vecna and Fred and Chrissy. I was more worried about the clock and stuff, like those kind of interactions. I thought they were a lot more significant. So another thing with Max too is that there could have been a premonition that we couldn't see. So the clock so we have 3 instances so far the clock strikes 4 times. 2 times with Chrissy, with her initial one and the second one before she dies. We get in the middle of a clock ringing out with Fred. The only time we hear the clock was with Fred is once, and that's when he's at the funeral. And it's right in the middle where it's like the clock's already ringing. He's there at the clock. We cut to him at that clock, and then the funeral around him, and then we get 4 strikes as well from Max. So I assume at this point that Fred also heard 4 strikes. That's my assumption at this moment. The only thing I can also kind of correlate the moment as well is that it's always the same damn clock. That is the same grandfather clock in all three of them. So that clock, of course, is some type of significance. No, for Chrissy, it was in the tree. For Max, it was in the wall, which was both similar. Fred is the one that was different when it came to the clock, where it was the actual funeral casket was the clock itself. So that's the only connections I have so far. I am intrigued, and
you were walking down the right line. You're close.
So yeah,
you're bringing up very important.
So I don't think I'm enough. Again, probably after the fact, like, oh, once I find out more information, preview information would make more sense. But at this moment, this is where I'm currently thinking, like, okay, the clock is definitely significant. This might be something that is very important to Vecna. We will get to that. The other things I didn't notice the first time I was rewatching them, it kind of looks like when Chrissy was in her moment, and I can't confirm this with Fred yet, because Fred, of course, we just saw the one thing of him in the road, and that was like the whole him in the grave thing, because we only saw that aspect. No one was watching Fred. That's what was happening. But one thing that kind of intrigued me was because we have the scene of Eddie seeing what Chrissy actually looks like when this is happening, and it kind of looks like Chrissy's like in a REM sleep as she's going through this. So for those who don't know, is that when you're in REM sleep, which is a stage of sleeping where your brain is very active, is that your eyeballs kind of move around as you're going through these kind of dreamlike trances. And it's something where I'm intrigued if that also kind of plays into it, like if there is her eyes moving because she's currently doing something, but like the other place she's in is also like the nightmare is the upside down for her, or wherever her vision, whatever it is. So I'm intrigued that that's also a thing too. So, and the two quotes that Vecna mentioned was, "It's time for your suffering to end, and I want you to join me," for Chrissy and Fred respectively. Yep. So those are two different statements, like with entirely different meanings. So we get one where we have, Chrissy's like, okay, you're suffering to end. Yeah, she has this guilt probably when it comes to her mother, and like, creating this eating disorder for her, and like, I don't think, to me, in my opinion at the moment, I don't think she killed her or an accident, just more so like a lingering guilt at the moment. Because Fred was more in part of it, because we actually have evidence that Fred actually did something, but like he could very well not be a murderer. There's no evidence that he is or he is not one. It could just be a regular accident where he swerved away from a deer and then the car blew up. We don't know, but and we know what Max, her guilt is her stepbrother, where we know she didn't murder him at all, and that there was nothing there. But again, there is lingering guilt and like what could have been with her brother, and so like that kind of makes sense with your suffering to end, which that there's a connection. I want you to join me is the one that when I rewatched this, that one was weird to me, because that's more Mind Flayer-esque of like, kind of cultish in a way, and I'm intrigued how that is becoming more a factor. It's like, is he building an army? I don't know, but like, or if he like joining me could even be like more Hannibal Lecter-esque of like, oh, I'm going to use you for my own energy, or eat the flesh, or whatever he's doing with them, because he, of course, like, again, who sucks out people's eyeballs. So there's a lot of questions, and I'm assuming that from your reaction there will be some to be answered, but like this Vecna to me is currently my most interested character that I am try to puzzle out. So yeah,
Okay. I'm very excited for you to see what's to come. I won't say any more.
I'm sorry for that wonderful ramble, everybody who's listening us at home, but like this is the workings of my mind right now of like I like live like trying to. It's like a Rubik's cube, trying to find which ways I should turn it to find that path that gets me to that predefined answer. So, yeah, but this is really fun, and I'm enjoying this so much. So, fun shit. Let's get to ratings because let's wrap this up.
I'm gonna start off. I'm gonna give it a 8.8. So like I said,
That's
it
pretty
was
fair.
a calm episode for me.
Fair
It's still a
score.
lot of fun that happened, but nothing crazy over the top happening yet.
I was thinking like
Connor,
8.4. 8.4, 8. Let's go Mitchell 8.45. We'll cut it right down the middle. I think that was a very good episode as
See, there's
well.
value in it.
There is value in it sometimes. You can still round up if you really want to, but like
Not all the time.
I think 8.45 is fair.
What's the damn point?
To me, like again, great episode. I love the characters. Again, like you mentioned, a little slower, but like wasn't like the banger of the first two. But at the same time, like I love the crumbs. The crumbs are so good for me. I just want to keep kind of poking around and like again, like me figuring out just
absolutely,
now.
yeah. It's your first time watching. It's all new.
And keep in mind, this is my first I've watched this episode and the next one. Those are the only two I've seen this season. I have to see because again, this is my first rewatch of this, and like I confirmed that. Like I thought this episode was 2 episodes, so I have a whole another one that I've seen, and but like kind of I never picked up on the Lucas thing in the first time. Again, like I never really did a heavy dissection of it, but like seeing that like Lucas also has the nosebleeds and the headaches, and like now circling back to him like oh this is like they're again the little crumbs here that I'm like eating up a little bit. I'm like I'm a little rat watching this stuff. Oh, so good. Mitchell.
Do you guys guessing?
I'm gonna guess 8.2.
Honestly, I'm gonna get 8.4. 2.
Okay, so I'm going with an 8.26. I'm going with this one. It's a decent episode. It's not spectacular. I definitely could have used a little bit more either Joyce or Hopper, because if you say Joyce and Hopper, people think Joyce and Hopper together. Yes. And obviously you're not going to get that in this particular episode, but I definitely think that there's not a whole lot with them in this particular episode, and I think that you could have used a little bit more of that Russia subplot, because the little bit that they give you is very good, but it's just a very small portion of it, and again, less of the whole Argyle being high thing, and it's definitely setting up for really good stuff. You're just not in it all the way this episode. So optimistic for what's to come. Also a lot less Eddie in this episode. There's not a whole lot of Eddie.
There's only one scene of Eddie, unfortunately.
Yeah. So it just feels like the characters that I like the most this season kind of get shortchanged here.
Yeah.
I will fight back a little bit of needing Joyce and Hopper in this one, because the fact that not having as much of them make an impact when it comes to the storyline of Elle and the rest of the boys, because the fact that if they were more prevalent, then it could, like, to me, the way that the director was doing this was by not having as much of them in this episode itself, it kind of makes that more emptiness feeling of them not having a parental figure when they actually need them. That's how I took that, at least.
Yes, and yeah, I totally understand that, but I'll counter that with I think every single one of the child actors, with the exception of Dustin, and I mean child, not young,
Yes.
not like, Joe Keery, or I mean the child actors, every single one of them has gotten significantly worse, except for Dustin, so I don't mind.
That's fair
I
enough.
wouldn't mind having less time with them, because most of them, I think, have, like, I think that Finn Wolfhard and Millie Bobby Brown have kind of fallen off a cliff this season.
That's fair.
And I'm
Hot
I'm
takes
okay
from
with
Mitchell.
both of those, Frank.
And no,
I
and
think
Noah Schnapp's already fallen off the cliff and landed face first.
He never
yeah.
rose up.
Yeah, exactly.
He never started his trail up the mountain. He just stayed at the bottom.
No, he was best when he was lost in season 1.
Honestly, I haven't liked so far Millie Bobby Brown's acting this so far. Like, again, like you have, I don't watch as much stuff as you have, but to me, I think she's doing a really good job. I have really.
She's not. In the movies that I've seen of her, which I'll be honest isn't much, but she also hasn't been in much, she's not a very strong actress.
Okay. And in the realm of Stranger Things, I have been very happy with how she's doing her character. So that's my defense of her at the moment. All right. Anything else, Jimmy, before we sign off here?
That's all I got.
Get ready for more season 4.
Oh yeah, let's go. Follow us on our socials, Instagram, X, whatever else is out there. We're probably there. Looking forward to next week's episode. And I know, trust me, this episode has been stuck in my head for this whole time, and I am so looking forward to revisiting this now.
Now we can finally move past.
I can probably move past it and actually go into unknown territory. I'm pumped. So, for Connor Vandermark, Mitchell Lee, and Tommy Grant, have a good one.